there's only one way to deal with this, and that's to cage exit, to go down there, but this time leave the cage, and this time leave it on scuba. And then it felt like a victory, right? I'm here.
And so, but when you go up to the surface, do you go back in the cage to go back up to the surface?
Yes.
Because you don't want to just swim up to the top because then they might bite your legs off.
Correct. But in the culture of cage exit great white shark diving, there's a interesting twist. For years, guys have been going out to Guadalupe and doing this stuff. It's a real kind of machismo culture. Who can get closest? Who can get the camera almost into the shark's mouth, et cetera. And for years, there was a lot of kind of one-upping and posting things online. And then a couple of years ago, out of what seemed like nowhere, Ocean Ramsey, this female freediver shark expert, shows on BBC video her swimming with no scuba, with the biggest great white shark anyone's ever seen. I think they call it Big Blue. And she's holding on to the fins. So all these guys, like all this testosterone of like, oh, I cage exited and I got this close and that close. And here comes this lady and she just demolishes the scene. Like no one has done what she's done. This shark is so big. This is her. This is insane. Her husband shot this footage from what I understand.
Oh my God. And imagine your wife doing this and you're going, baby, what are you doing?
So
she doesn't even have fucking scuba gear
But she's
on.
holding on to this shark. So,
it doesn't seem to mind either.
I mean, when I look at this, I mean, I get nervous. It's also beautiful. But what I love about it is, there was so much pigeon chesting around.
She looks like a fish too. I would eat her. If I was a shark, even the way her legs are with that outfit on, she looks delicious. Look at the size of that thing.
Biggest one ever seen on record.
Really?
Yeah.
How big is it?
I don't know. I mean, a 10 or 12, there's someone else. A 10 or 12 foot shark is a big shark because the girth is what's freaky, right? That's probably a 16-foot shark. I'm probably going to get this wrong. I'm sure the sharkanistas will come out.
All that.
Look at this. Like she's petting it or he's petting it.
Yeah, these people are out of their fucking minds.
Yeah, they're out of their minds.
You're just lucky it's not hungry.
Right. And there are a lot of tuna out there. So Guadalupe is an amazing place. It's just this big rock jutting up out of the ocean. And I wanted to learn the history of this place. Turns out that if this is true, what I was told by one of the local officials is that
dolphins playing with them. Those dolphins are fucking with them.
Some politician in Mexico, his wife had an affair with some guy, and apparently they put the guy out there on the island. But the island is known, maybe that's just lore, but people were spearfishing out there and getting eaten. They were putting the bloody fish on their hip and getting munched, and so they realized this is filled with great whites. And when you drop anchor there, it's like I remember every time going out there, I've been there twice now, I was thinking, oh, we're not going to see any sharks. You drop anchor, a shark breaches. They're everywhere. It's just shark soup.
Is it just because of the high amount of tuna?
And I think they probably breed near there. There's something called Shark Cafe, which is not far from there, that oceanographers like to study. Anyway.
So that's one of your adrenaline things.
Yeah, that's right. So you asked me. Yeah, so I used to do stuff like that, which is frankly stupid, right? Because I make my living on land and I'd like to someday have a family and all that kind of stuff. And that's not productive for that sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah, that sort of thing is the kind of thing that I should avoid if I'm going to have a long life.
Jamie, who are you telling me that someone got their hand bitten off? One of the Jackass guys?
Yeah, you didn't want to watch the video, but yeah, and Jackass, like the promo during Shark Week.
Yeah.
Got it bitten off?
Not off. It got
mangled,
bitten, I guess, and it was fucked up, and he had to have surgery, and I believe he still has his hand. So
those guys are crazy, shooting themselves out of cannons. That kind of thing never appealed to me. But I'm not a fighter. I got in fights when I was a kid. I loved the clarity of mind that came from the adrenaline. It was boxing in ring, so it's fun. I mean, but I think as a 46-year-old, and where my my brain is my living, this kind of thing.
Yeah, not good to get hit in the head.
What are your vices? Am I allowed to ask?
Yeah, I do like junk food occasionally. I do like to drink, probably more than I should. I enjoy. The problem is I do shows all the time. They're in nightclubs, and we have a couple cocktails, and then next thing you know, a couple is 3 or 4, and then we do podcasts, and podcasts a lot of times will be drinking. If it's anything that I should do less of, it's definitely booze. But I'm around a very boozy culture. A lot of my friends drink and drink pretty hard. And when it comes to how many of them are actually healthy, it's a fucking small number.
I always worry about the number of suicides among comedians or early deaths, like the Belushi thing. Now, granted, I'm not really aware, or Richard Pryor or things like that. It seems like stuff hits early in that community.
What vices do you have? Do you have vices?
Adrenaline used to be a vice. You know, I used to
do risky behaviors.
Not risky in the illegal sense,
sports stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I went cage exit shark dive and loved every second of it. Great white sharks, and until I had an air failure down there.
What happened?
I had to call over another diver and do the share air thing, and
holy shit!
I was alone in the cage.
Oh my god!
I went with my buddy Michael Muller, who's this fantastic photographer, like celebrity photographer, but he also takes pictures of sharks. We were studying fear, so we decided to go do VR of great whites off Guadalupe. I went the first year, stayed in the cage, didn't exit. We got my scuba certification. Second year, this is 2017, went out, bunch of friends. Brian McKenzie, who's kind of a like performance guy and former SEAL team guy. And anyway, we're out there. I'm in the cage. 3 divers leave to do the cage exit thing with their film the VR, and I'm on the hookah line. And then at some point,
what's a hookah line?
It's a line up to the surface that you're breathing oxygen.
Oh, okay.
But I was alone in the cage, and I'd been there the year before. So the sharks are coming in all over the place, and they're huge. I mean, the girth is insane. But I'm in the cage, and they're out of the cage. And then all of a sudden, I got no air. I'm like,
Jesus Christ.
So I look up, and the hose had kind of boa constricted up on itself. So I was like, so I pop up. Remember, no scuba on me because I'm just in the cage. And the thing's like concrete, clink, clink, clink. And you're down 40 feet below the surface. It's like, oh, God. So I drop down to the corner. There's a spare tank down there. Open it up. Nothing. Nothing comes out.
It's empty?
It's empty. So I go to the other reserve tank. Open it up. Nothing. Okay, so now I'm screwed. So I'm getting I haven't had any air in a little bit, but probably only 10, 15 seconds, but freaking out. So I get up on top of the cage. I've got a weight belt on, and I'm like, okay, I guess I shoot for the surface because I can see the boat up there. Because if I stay down here, I'm clearly going to die. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, shooting for the surface is exactly what they like. Are they going to eat? You're just I started to kind of panic a bit.
Oh, Jesus.
And at that point, one of the divers, that's me there. That's while I'm in the cage. See, they're big. They're big animals. So
and how are they attracting these fish?
You're not allowed to chum. So they just come in. They're super guys. You film that from the cage. So
that was meat, though.
Yeah, so you can keep tuna up on the surface, but we're down in the deep cage. There's a surface cage and a deep cage. So then what happened? Yeah, Muller shot that for our VR in the lab. So then what happened was this guy, Brock, who's one of the divers, that's Muller. Muller wears a yellow suit to look more like a tuna so they come closer.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, he's you guys would get along. He's a longtime Hollywood guy who's a kind of photographer who does these adventures. So then one of the divers saw me, and I was like, I need air, and he kind of looked at me, and so he kicked his way back over, but that was a long wait. And then we did the share air thing, but now 2 divers are out, and we're there sharing air, and there's only so much air before you eventually run out, and there's nothing in the reserves. Eventually they came back, and then we pulled the rope and got out. And it was enough of a scary experience for me that I was like, oh, God. So and actually I got out, and a guy from the SEAL teams came over to me, super calm, like typical of those guys. He was like, so what do you take away from that experience? And I was like, check the safety tanks. He was like, check the safeties. But I will say this, I'm not tough. Like, this is not to kind of, inflate myself. But the next day I woke up and I was seriously freaked out. And so I actually went down the next day again, and I cage exited. And the reason I did it is because, first of all, when I cage exited, I was on scuba. So I felt totally contained. I knew I wasn't going to die of an air failure. And the other reason is everything we know about trauma and the treatment of trauma is that if you live with that bug in your brain about quote unquote almost dying, in fact, I don't even like to say that, that's stuck in you. So I went down there in the cage, and then I cage exited.
And you keep saying cage exited.
Swam out of the cage with the sharks. Turns out when they're swimming at you, if you swim toward them, they bank off. If you don't, if you shoot for the surface or something, they go, oh, you're prey, and they can go after you. But if you just swim toward them, then they bank off pretty early.
So how do you get to the surface?
Well, you get back in the cage to get back up. So you get into the cage at the top, they lower it in a crane.
Right.
Then you all go out on scuba. Mm-hmm. And then You're swimming around, getting video. The sharks come at you. You go at them, and then they bank
so
off.
you're saying you cage exited, meaning you swam around with them with the scuba gear, not you went to the surface.
Correct. The next day I woke up and I was just so distraught about what had happened the day before. I decided